From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here. It's hard to even talk about the internet as if it's just one thing. Because depending on when you first logged on, it can mean completely different things. For some, it's this.
It was a tool of the Pentagon.
For others, it's...
You've got mail.
Or...
Pets.com, because pets can't drive.
And now, of course, there's AI.
I can speak in any language. Για παράδειγμα, αυτή τη στιγμή μιλάω στα ελληνικά.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
And one of the people on the front lines of this, a kind of Forrest Gump of the internet, is a Canadian named Ron Deibert. Ron runs something called the Citizen Lab. And at its most basic level, it's a research center that investigates how governments, corporations, and bad actors use technology to do very grim things. Which is interesting because if you knew Ron as a kid, you wouldn't exactly think, future cybersecurity watchdog. Can you talk a little bit about growing up in Canada and your upbringing?
Sure. I don't get asked that question very often. I had an unlikely origin story for where I ended up.
His dad was a mechanic. His mom was a housewife.
I grew up in a hardscrabble part of Vancouver. Most of the people that I hung out with, that I went to school with, ended up either in some kind of organized crime or in jail.
In school, that wasn't really a priority.
There wasn't a lot of higher education in my family. We had one book in the household that was a Bible that was never opened.
But they did have a television, multiple TVs, in fact. And Ron watched everything. Then, one day, when he was just 9 years old, he stumbled on this.
The first one is the break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters at
the Watergate hearings.
What did the president know, and when did he know it?
As he and his family watched the hearings day after day, Ron got his first glimpse into the world of power and corruption and secrecy.
We have a cancer within close to the presidency that's growing.
And he came to the realization that systems don't always erase the truth. Sometimes they just bury it.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
An understanding that would come to define his life's work. Because, in a sense, Ron actually was built to fight these kinds of things. It stirred something in him, something he learned on the streets of Vancouver.
I witnessed bullying and intimidation firsthand growing up. I know what it's like. I don't like bullies. I especially don't like bullies getting away with things and hurting innocent people.
He couldn't have predicted just how important that street sensibility would become for him. I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and this is Click Here. We tell true stories about the people making and breaking our digital world. And today, Ron Deibert and the birth of one of the most celebrated internet watchdog groups in the world. And we look back at the digital world we were promised and the one we actually got.
You know, there have been great strides made in raising awareness about security risks and some amazing new tools to better communicate securely, like Signal. But against all of that, honestly, it's like we're living in a Philip K. Dick novel.
Stay with us. Ron graduated high school and made it into university, one of the only kids in his class who did.
I just was blown away reading philosophy, reading history. There's this whole world that was opened up to me. So
he was on track to study Soviet politics, even planning a PhD, when fate intervened. Or rather, a mentor did. The Cold War is over, he told Ron, so you should probably find a new specialty.
And he very sagely said, you know, no one's looking at, the way he phrased it was the telecommunications revolution. And a light bulb just went off.
It wasn't a turn away from politics as much as it was moving toward the things starting to shape it: technology. This was the early 1990s. The internet was still, in the public imagination at least, this boundless utopian space.
Have you ever borrowed a book from thousands of miles away?
The enthusiasm around the internet was very contagious, and I was caught up in it too.
Across the country.
Gesture ahead. Take next exit.
Without stopping for directions.
It was one story after another about all of these dramatic improvements in how we access information and communicate with each other, something that was oriented towards more freedom, more democracy. Serious people were talking about it in that way. It'll be impossible for authoritarian regimes to withstand this, tsunami of information.
But Ron wasn't so sure. He had a sneaking suspicion governments would one day use this technology against their own people. And an idea sprouted. If governments might one day use technology to watch citizens, why couldn't he turn that around and use that same technology to watch governments right back?
This is a model that could be appropriated by citizens, by scientists, by even academics to watch what governments are doing and hold them accountable. Let's find out what's going on beneath the surface of the internet that citizens need to know about.
By then, Ron had his PhD. He was teaching at the University of Toronto. And as he went around campus, he started keeping an eye out for a place to set up shop and start working on his idea, somewhere where he'd go unnoticed.
So I identified a building that was under construction, and I actually smuggled myself in while it was under construction and identified a small basement space.
Every detective has an origin story. For Ron, it started in a basement. He called it their little hacker hothouse. And his first hire? A fellow East Vancouver native named Nart Villeneuve.
Also a bit of a street kid himself, had no computer science training, was a self-taught hacker.
A guy who loved computers so much, he didn't even consider this a job.
I found out from our payroll office that many months had gone by and he had not submitted his timesheet to get paid. He told me he couldn't actually believe that someone was paying him to do the work that he was doing, which he would have gladly done for free.
As Ron and Nart sat in that basement blasting heavy metal, Ron's idea began to take shape. What if this could be more than just a hangout? What if it became a research center, one focused on how power uses technology to watch, to track, and sometimes to silence? And it wasn't just governments, but corporations and the ultra-wealthy. Eventually, Ron gave it a name: the Citizen Lab. It turns out Nart had a special gift for this work because he could move through systems without being noticed. All on his own, he'd figured out a way to connect to computers in China and browse the internet as if he were inside the country, without China knowing.
Something that we do now routinely in the Citizen Lab, but it was the first time I had seen this presented. And what he was doing there was trying to cross-check, what web content is being blocked by China.
And inside China's networks, they found exactly what Ron had suspected so many years ago: a government using technology to crack down on ordinary people, not just at home, but abroad as well. Then Nart started poking around in the networks of other authoritarian regimes, like Saudi Arabia and Iran, and he found the same thing there. They began publishing reports about what they discovered, often things that no one had ever seen before. So people started to watch for whatever the Citizen Lab would uncover next, which could explain why, in 2008, Ron got an unexpected call from a researcher.
A person named Greg Walton, and we had
who worked with activists and NGOs in Tibet. Greg said this weird thing was happening. The activists in Tibet were being flooded with computer viruses.
Simultaneously, people in those communities were occasionally being arrested And it seemed like authorities knew in advance things that they were planning and doing, suggesting that they were under surveillance.
So Ron's team flew to India to meet with the activists. And then, with their consent,
we effectively wiretapped their machines.
They saw what Greg had been reporting unfold in real time, and it confirmed an alarming truth, that someone had hacked into the Dalai Lama's computers and was spying on them. At first, it wasn't clear how far the operation reached, but then they stumbled onto a little glitch in the code. The hackers had left a clue, a big one.
They had left a directory wide open, allowing us to see this very well-organized spreadsheet that they maintained online of all of the victims that they had compromised.
This is a moment tech detectives dream about, like finding the notebook of a serial burglar, not just listing every break-in, but carefully explaining how each one of them was done. And what they found inside that spreadsheet shocked them. There were IP addresses for some 1,300 computers in 103 different countries, many of them systematically compromised by, it turns out, the Chinese government.
Ministries of Foreign Affairs, diplomatic missions, ASEAN, banks. We were looking over the shoulders of spies who were involved in a global cyber espionage campaign. And it was truly the first of its kind.
Ron had founded the Citizen Lab for exactly this kind of moment. Still, even he hadn't imagined anything on this scale.
We just looked at each other like, what the hell? What do we do with this? This is unbelievable.
So they wrote a report and then went back to work. Or at least they tried to.
Well, when the day of that report came out, journalists flooded to the university. There were trucks parked outside of the building. I remember walking up to the lab that morning and thinking as I'm walking, geez, I wonder what's going on here today.
And it was you.
And it was us. Yeah, we were the biggest story in the world that day.
Their little basement lab was on the front page of the New York Times. And the thing Ron had long suspected about the internet, the rest of the world began to understand too.
A lot of smart people said, wow, I had no idea that this could happen, that my computer, which I see as a window to the world, could also, in the very next minute, be looking back at me.
For some, though, Citizen Lab was a little too effective. When we come back, it turns out that they weren't just making headlines, they were making enemies, too.
This is the same for any investigative journalist who antagonizes powerful people. There are going to be consequences. And maybe I didn't fully anticipate where that would come from.
Stay with us. You're listening to Click Here. I'm Dina Temple-Raston. In the back of his mind, Ron expected his work would make him some enemies. These days, he can't step foot in China. And lots of other governments, the Saudis and the Jordanians, just to name two, aren't that happy with his team's research either. But what he didn't necessarily anticipate was how uncomfortable he would make democratic governments. Because surveillance isn't just an authoritarian habit. It's a modern one. Every government leverages technology to watch people in the name of security, efficiency, or order. What made the Citizen Lab different was that Ron and his team were turning the lens around. They were putting power itself on notice.
I'm sure that went through their mind. If we are to believe what Deibert is saying, we might be next.
And over the next few years, Ron and his crew made a lot more people in power nervous.
How truly free is the internet?
Computer researchers in Canada have created what some say is the most advanced tool yet in helping internet.
It's called Siphon. It's a software program that's been created by university researchers in Toronto.
Basement computer lab at the University of Toronto.
The Citizen Lab would go on to expose hacking campaigns targeting dissidents, journalists, lawyers, teachers, governments, corporations, intelligence agencies. No one seemed to be off limits. And then, in 2016, Ron and his team stumbled on something darker. It was one of the most sophisticated and nefarious spyware programs ever created. It began quietly with a single suspicious text message sent to a human rights activist named Ahmed Mansour in the United Arab Emirates.
He received a text message on his iPhone that contained a link. Instead of clicking on that, he shared it with Bill Marzak, the lead technical researcher in the Citizen Lab, who set up a system in the lab that allowed him to capture all of those ingredients, including Pegasus.
Pegasus, a powerful piece of spyware sold by an Israeli company called NSO Group. At the time, Pegasus wasn't widely known. But as Ron's team began to take it apart, they realized this wasn't just another hacking tool. This was an escalation, the digital equivalent of going from conventional weapons to nuclear. Most early spyware relied on human error. You click a link, you answer a text, you open the door yourself. Pegasus didn't need that. It could infect a phone without the user doing anything at all. No tap, no click, no warning. And then just take the device over.
It can turn on the microphone even when you're not using a phone call and just record what you're doing in the room. It can turn on your camera. It can record what's on your screen.
NSO had been marketing Pegasus to governments as a very stealthy, high-tech way to battle cartels or track terrorists. But the Citizen Lab found that they were using it to target good guys, like that activist as well.
And so that was August 2016. That was the first time we encountered it.
You went out with a report about NSO a short time later?
Yes, the $1 Million Dissident Report was the first ever report on Pegasus.
People started bringing their phones to the Citizen Lab to get them checked for spyware. And then, in 2021, it even got the attention of the White House. Former President Joe Biden announced he was putting NSO Group on a federal blacklist. He signed an executive order to restrict the use of commercial spyware by the U.S.
All of those things that you hope would come out of your research were starting to happen. And I just couldn't believe that there were these outcomes. An executive order being put out there by President Biden on commercial spyware. Phenomenal. This is like the Holy Grail.
But his celebration didn't last long. Ron says he's increasingly concerned about what he's hearing from the Trump administration. There are new reports that ICE has reactivated a contract with a spyware company called Paragon Solutions, a contract Biden had previously paused. Federal officers rounding up illegal immigrants are using a facial recognition app to try to identify them. For Ron, the concern isn't just these surveillance tools, it's what it suggests. A growing willingness to normalize powerful commercial surveillance technologies, not just for national security, but for everyday law enforcement.
You know, there have been great strides made in raising awareness about security risks and people, documenting internet censorship and surveillance and cyber espionage. But the very mission that we set up for ourselves to act as a counterintelligence for civil society, I think that mission is now at the greatest risk that it's ever been in the last 23 years that we've been around. I could very well foresee aggressive litigation efforts coming at us and other groups to try to shut us down.
But Ron's concern doesn't stop just with the Citizen Lab or even with the United States. He's worried about the signal this sends globally.
All of the gains that we've made are almost certainly now at risk, but there'll be ripple consequences as well throughout the world. Because of his behavior, it's going to open up the opportunity for oligarchs and dictators around the world to model themselves on that behavior.
In other words, what happens here doesn't stay here. He and I talked before federal officers had killed 2 American protesters in Minneapolis, but it felt like he saw it coming.
We're in for a very dark period. So, our mission now, it takes on a new meaning in this current environment. We've got a lot of work to do.
That work doesn't start in labs or courtrooms. It starts with the rest of us paying attention. This is Click Here. If you want to learn more about Ron Deibert and the Citizen Lab, check out his latest book, Chasing Shadows, Cyber Espionage, Subversion, and the Global Fight for Democracy. It's now out in paperback. Click Here is a production of Recorded Future News and PRX. Today's show was written and produced by Megan Dietrich, Sean Powers, Erica Gaida, Zach Hirsch, and Casey Georgie. It was edited by Karen Duffin and Sarah Quevedo, and fact-checked by Darren Ankrum. Original music is by Ben Livingston, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Our staff writer is Lucas Riley, our illustrator is Megan Goff, and our sound designers and engineers are Jake Cook and Jesse Neiswanger. I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and thanks for listening.